I was in a waiting room last week and there was a copy of Newsweek sitting on the table. I picked it up and a picture on the cover of looks like a giant galaxy. And the title of the lead article was "What's New in the Universe?" I picked it up and began reading it, and it was startling. It talked about how tens of thousands of years ago, people lived in small communities, and they thought that was the world. And as things evolved, it turned out there were other people living 50 miles away from them that they didn't know about, and they were shocked that a larger world existed. Population expanded, and communication improved, and pretty soon people in Europe began to believe that Europe was the center of the world, and the Mediterranean, and that if you went too far from there, you might fall off the ends of the earth. And then people realized that there's something beyond the world they lived in. You could transcend, there were oceans that you could navigate through, and there was a larger world that was never conceived of before. Some people denied it, some people were shocked by it, but slowly they accommodated to it. And then around 17th century, astronomers began looking up at the skies, and they began to realize that maybe the Earth was not the center of the universe, even though the stars and the sun seemed to be circling around it, and proposed the notion that maybe the sun is at the center of the universe and that we're circling around the sun. Well, that was heresy, and as you know, people were hung because of that belief. It was so offensive because that conflicted so much with what was believed, and also conflicted with our sense of being so central in the universe, and also with a lot of religious dogma that historically believed that we were the center of the universe. And then the next step of this kind of shrinkage of our place in the universe was when it was discovered that our sun is actually part of a solar system that's located in a galaxy, and that we're one tiny spot in that galaxy made up of billions of stars and solar systems. What's next? It was then discovered that there are millions and billions of galaxies, and our place shrunk. And each step along the way, people felt, well, this couldn't be so. These crazy scientists and astronomers are saying things that couldn't have any basis in fact. But as things have gone along, a lot of evidence from many scientific realms has confirmed these theories. And some of these theories, like Einstein's theory, I'll talk to you about in a moment, predicted things that later were proven to be true. For example, the speed of light. Before there were good measurements for measuring the speed of light, he said that it traveled at 186,000 miles a second. Well, that proved to be true and very important in terms of our understanding of the universe and many of the scientific discoveries that we've had. And one of the things he predicted also was that the universe that we're living in is expanding. That is, it isn't just that the stars' distance from each other and from ourselves is fixed, but gradually they're floating away from each other. And from that, people began to wonder, well, wait a minute. Maybe if we're floating away from each other, that means at some point, all of the stars and galaxies were closer to each other. And that if you think about this long enough, you realize they shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. To what point? I mean, how can you fit all of these galaxies, stars, into some small space? But the theory held that that happened, that there was once a small space, small piece of material that, as all of you know now, for some reason exploded into an incredible explosion. This thing that was so tiny contained all the material that's in all the universe that we know now. I mean, it's staggering to think about it, but there it is. Just in this, I don't know how small it was, but when I read it, it was pretty tiny. This big? I don't know, but it was pretty small. Well, as the scientists studied more and more about this expanding universe, they began to discover strange things about it and to raise questions that needed some answering. One thing they puzzled about was, if the universe is expanding, what's causing that to happen? I mean, it could have been the explosion was so great that merely the momentum of the explosion, as these atoms and galaxies and stars and planets started shooting out into space, they went so fast, they just kept on going and going and going. But, as you know, things just can't keep on going forever, because there's sometimes some pulls on them, and one pull on them was the pull of gravity. That is, every object in the universe has a gravitational pull. You don't realize much that a table or chair or you have much gravitational pull. You realize that the large stars and the sun has a gravitational pull. Well, if they do, then they should be pulling each other towards each other. The universe shouldn't be expanding. The universe should be shrinking. Well, how to explain the fact that it is expanding? Well, the next discovery that was made was that in the interstellar space, there's a kind of dust, a repellent dust called dark matter that pushes things away from it. And this went quite a ways to explaining, although in some ways that are murky to me and to scientists as well, what this dark matter is and how it works. But here is at least a possible explanation for the continuing expansion of the universe. But there are ways scientists found to measure the amount of dark matter in the universe. And they found that the amount that is known to exist is insufficient to explain the expansion. It helps, but it's insufficient. So they started trying to think of other things that could possibly explain this. Meanwhile, in another field of astronomy, they were studying the texture of the universe. And if you can think of the texture of the universe as something like a piece of spandex that was in a ball at the time of the Big Bang that left the universe expanding, if you just stretched it out and stretched it out and stretched it out and stretched it out, you'd begin to see in the stretched spandex, perhaps, some imperfections. The material was not uniform. And as they started looking and thinking about these imperfections, the theory has arisen that within the universe as we know it, some of these imperfections are either the beginnings of or the possibility of another big bang that would create another universe. And that multiple universes have been created over the course of eternity. And every universe contains these little bits of fusion material that is capable itself of forming another universe. Well, why are we not tripping over universes? And why do we seem to know about only one, our universe? Well, one theory is that every time one of these universes is born from this explosion of a big bang, from a minute piece of enormously compressed matter, the new universe has a different set of physical laws, different from ours, different from each other. We are stuck with a universe that has only 3 dimensions, which the speed of light travels at 186 miles a second, and many other characteristics that are not the only ones that could exist in a universe. they happen to be ones that are just the kind that would lead to organisms like us surviving. If the universe was such that the gravitational force was 10 times what ours is, 100 times what ours is, we could never live. If it was such that light burned anything in its path, or if things were 6-dimensional rather than 3-dimensional, we wouldn't be here. So of the billions and billions of trillions of universes that have been formed with different laws, we are fortunate enough to live in a universe that has physical laws that are compatible with life and a nature and a world that we have grown up in. This theory, which has some support from evidence, doesn't hardly explains everything, but no new theory does, and it is very humbling to think that there are not only people living in huts 50 miles from us, but there may be universes in this world, so many of them that we can't conceive of, that put us in a fortunate position of being alive and functioning, but also it's very awesome and unsettling, scary to think of all this having gone on around us and continuing to go on as we plot our day-to-day existence in much smaller units of time than the time that these universes require to be formed, to live, to die. One possibly consoling aspect of all of this is that if each of these little bits of fusion can form another universe, it means that this will go on and has gone on forever. And that too, I find just sends chills up and down my spine to think, how could it be forever? There has to have been something that preceded the forever. But it seems like there wasn't, and there won't be. That the sun may someday die out, but the universes will continue to reproduce and create other ones in which perhaps human beings like us will exist and thrive.
you.